Hey everyone, and welcome back to 2MoreTakes. My name is Jack,
My name is Joseph.
and today we're going to talk to you about some more movies. This time, however, last thing we uploaded was the Paul Verhoeven episode, which actually we filmed a lot earlier. But the last one we recorded as of this time, which is it's Star Wars Day for anyone interested. Of course, we're not talking about Star Wars today. That might be another day's sort of topic. I'm
That
not
might be
sure
a little
how
bit,
we'll do that, but
a little bit too
that's
much
one in the
for
future.
one
That's a bit too
episode.
much, yeah. But yeah, no, our last one was me ranting for 29 minutes about Birds of Prey.
We're also going from a film that came out, with films that came out in the last couple of years, to films that came out, 40 years ago?
Yeah, we're actually talking about. Well, first off, we're talking about something of quality, so that makes a bit of a change from things. Because obviously, recently, well, I guess not with the Paul Verhoeven thing, but with again the last thing we recorded, it was just talking about. Oh, we're talking about schlock from today's times.
Well, Justice League and Birds of Prey, recent stuff. Today, we're on a mission from God.
Oh yeah, baby.
We're going back to one of my favourite films, The Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
We both went back and watched it together a few days ago, along with the sequel, which we'll get onto. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a topic and a half.
but The Blues Brothers, one of my favourite childhood films, and it's a mix of like a musical with. I don't know what genre it's like.
Well,
'Cause
I think what we said when we were watching it, I said this quite sort of prominently when we were watching it together. I said that it's kind of reminded me of like a blues version of The Wizard of Oz. Like it's got fairy tale logic in it. It felt very sort of like a blend of like a Zucker Brothers comedy, like Naked Gun, but not going too far with the surrealism. It's just like a few elements here and there. It's just like they get blown up all the time, the characters, and they survive. They just dust off a few bricks and that, and they're completely fine.
It's the holy mission that they're on, no harm can come to them until they reach their end goal. Yeah, and I believe you mentioned that, like Wizard of Oz, except rather than picking up friends along the way, they pick up enemies. There's something about the original Blues Brothers that it has this sort of fun feel to it that you wouldn't get it's harder to get that sort of film in a present day setting, not only because a lot of practical effects and the amount of cars, because it's full of car chases, which is a lot of fun for me. I love.
Yeah, it's weird. I think a lot of people mostly associate the Blues Brothers as like a musical sort of blues film, and yet one of the prominent things in it is like a car chase movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's weird because I feel like it would fall into the same category in a more sort of whimsical comedic way than like in like the Fast and Furious type of movies.
Yeah.
Like in a way, those are kind of fantastical and weird now for us, but obviously to a very stupidly sort of constructed. Like it's like those films were written by children, whereas this was obviously written by. It's a very similar crew to the ones who obviously made Ghostbusters, which is another big hit by Dan Aykroyd's sort of writing.
Yeah, so we got Dan Aykroyd before he took a turn. I don't know.
Well, we can talk about that in 2000 because I've got a lot to say on that particular topic. But
quite a young Dan Aykroyd playing Elwood Blues.
Yes, Slim.
Yeah. Got John Belushi playing Jake Blues. And John Landis as the director of the original Blues Brothers.
Yeah, I've only recently. You know this, Joe. I've only recently sort of come across John Landis. I told you the other day that I'd recently watched An American Werewolf in London for the first time. I'd seen Blues Brothers a few times in recent years, and obviously over the years when I was a kid, I saw bits and pieces of it, but never saw the full thing. But John Landis is kind of somebody who's been on the outskirts of my sort of like filmic knowledge, the industry. And it's kind of been weird to just kind of discover his films and sort of see that, well, he's made a lot of stuff that I've considered is very good, and stuff I've enjoyed.
Yeah, so you got John Landis, who's actually, in terms of filmmaking, the Blues Brothers is quite something. Some of it's quite simple, and it's got that musical aesthetic for a lot of it, where
I think there's some good cinematography during those sequences. I think When I think about the look of the Blues Brothers, I'll always think of the end sort of show when Jake and Elwood are doing is it Somebody to Love, or is it Everybody Needs Somebody?
On
like that
stage,
entire number is, and Elwood doing his tap dancing and stuff like that, along the edge of the stage. I feel like that was all really well shot. It's very. I feel like I could see that on an advert for like a Film Force sort of like film festival week or something, where it's like the best movies in the world being played this week, and Harry Potter for some reason.
Okay.
I like Harry Potter movies, but to be fair, like it's weird that they combine those things in like the programming.
But so Blues Brothers as well. When we were watching it the other day, I was saying there's an extended version that adds some scenes that we watched the original version. From what I could tell,
I didn't know that there was an extended version. I didn't realize that this was the first sort of. I guess Peter Jackson ripped off the idea from this film.
Because there's the thing that sold it for me, because it starts out just filming like the dreary industrial parts of Chicago, sort of outside the prison, don't they, where Jake is being released, and then
it's weird. It's that watching that. It's like I was watching. I think it was Total Recall again recently, or it was some film where.
It's very...
There's those films where you watch it and you always think it starts from a certain point, and then you watch the actual beginning of it, and then you're like, why do I remember this being in the film? And it's that whenever you turn the TV on, maybe, and you see this film is on, and it's just like, oh, it's just started. It's like proverbially just started. But it's like missed out the first bit. Yeah. I always feel like Blues Brothers had that whenever I was watching it on telly, because I feel like that was all absent from me.
Yeah, it's only like there's a little bit of opening credits across like the smokestacks and it's really dim, and it's actually quite contrast to the rest of the film for the most part.
Well, it's got a very grungy aesthetic the entire way through. It's just that it's completely contrasted with. We won't talk about the sequel yet, but, as you know, it's completely contrasted with the sequel and how they present the fantastical sort of elements. Like, it's all very it's grungy but cartoony. Like, again, it's like I just go back to the Carrie Fisher with the rocket launcher.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's really upbeat and sort of fun, and then they're actually again like causing $1 million worth of damage and sort of endangering lives, and yet it's fine.
Does anyone actually die in the film though?
I don't believe so. No, there's no death. Yeah. There's just a lot of gunfire and car crashes.
Very wacky races.
And like people falling in the water and stuff. Although those Nazis though, questionable.
Oh yeah, no, they do die, don't they? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, they basically die because both cars go into a grave in the road.
They are, white supremacists, so we already want them to die anyway, basically. So it's fine.
Oh, I don't know about that. No, I'm being joking. I'm joking.
But so again, from when the beginning of the film, I knew it wasn't the extended cut because there's a really funny bit in the extended one, as I said when we were watching it, where they cut straight to Jake being sort of released in the original, whereas there's a bit where they wake him up in the extended, and there's a really like classic sort of punch sound effect and him sort of moaning as they bash him over the head with a baton to wake him up. Which is quite amusing, but they cut that out of the official release.
Yeah, like theatrical.
Yeah, just to get straight into it. I can't remember any of the other extended parts particularly. I think there's a bit with Carrie Fisher and like some other bits here and there, and a bit where they park the car that I mentioned as well. There's some bits here and there. There's nothing major that you miss from the extended cut, but there's little bits that I might bring up later. But so obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, follows Jake and Elwood, Jake being released from prison, and they meet up outside. They've got this sort of holy backdrop to them, haven't they? The big glowing prison doors as he gets released, and as Elwood is waiting for him at the car. And they both just sort of casually stroll up to each other and embrace each other in this sort of really abstract environment from where,
as you said, it is like he's it's like heaven has thrown him out. Like it's almost like the character of Jake. He's being like sent back to this mortal coil. This is me being poetic. Sent back to this mortal coil, and Elwood's there to pick him up. And
he has a calling.
He has to pick up the pieces and find God and a holy mission and a quest.
put the band back together.
It's funny how you mentioned, obviously, that they are is very abstract in that they're very... Immediately in that beginning, you notice how, despite later on, there are some differences between them. They are very similar in how reserved they are. It's almost like they're stoned the entire time. Because, again, one thing that I do want to stress is that I do think there is a clear difference between them, which again, is something we can bring up later in the sequel. But as you said, Jake has that energy, but he's also kind of the more rebellious one. Whereas Elwood, he's kind of a bit dimmer, but he's also more reserved. He comes up with the more sort of he comes up with the more subtle, sort of smarter plans when he's not talking. He doesn't really... He's very sort of, not simple in a stupid way, but he's very sort of just closed, and Jake is that more explosive one. Whereas but obviously between those exchanges, they are very similar. They have that very cool sort of reserved sort of attitude, but there are some small key differences. But as you said, most of the time they are just very sort of like the mall scene where they're crashing through the mall in cars is a perfect example of how, sort of mellow they play the parts, and how that contrasts with what's going on, and how funny that is.
They both meet up, and then you get introduced to the third character, the car, the Bluesmobile. Because I love that car. That's one of my favourite things. Because when I grew up, I loved police cars, I loved chases, I loved all that stuff. And the Bluesmobile has always been one of my favourite vehicles. 1974 Dodge sedan, old police car. And I like how they have this interaction, don't they, at the beginning, where they're driving. He picks him up and he's like, "My own brother picks me up in a police car. What happened to the old Bluesmobile?" And he's like, "I traded it for a microphone."
Well, no, first he thinks he traded it for the car. Then that's the great subversion there, and that's something that is retained in a lot of the humor. It's sometimes very situational, but it is just very. It's like a communication error with the characters. It's like they're trying to communicate something, it doesn't get understood, or they're trying to be understood, the person isn't being receptive, and so one of them pushes it further to try and get the message across. It's like in that same exchange, obviously, we get the first instance of the Bluesmobile's sort of near sort of magical, mythical powers, where they jump a bridge just because Elwood's like, do you not like the new car?
Yeah,
you hate it, don't you?
He's trying to impress him, and they just. It's basically, again, they're rebellious throughout the film, and even just getting out of prison, they're like, let's run this red light, jump this bridge, just to. And it is almost, some of the stunts are on the edge of believable. There's one in particular later on that's like completely out there, but most of it is like just the car pushed to its extreme limits.
Well, they never have any lightning effects coming off of the car or anything like that, because of course that would be a terrible idea to do something when doing the magic. Yeah.
But and then they head on their way. They go visit the penguin. The nun where they.
Not Danny DeVito.
No, but so they're like two orphans. Obviously, two boys turned a little bit rough because they seem to have a background of crime. But then they get their sort of holy quest. It's like the quest for the Holy Grail, except their quest is to keep the orphanage afloat by raising money to, make sure they don't get sold out. And
which is a really nice sort of it's a good quest to have for those characters, because they are sort of selfish assholes a lot of the time. Because despite, obviously, they're very likable, but they do screw a lot of people over in the film. Yeah. And obviously, when the penguin, who's their nun mum, or Marge from Gremlins 2, The New Batch, when she obviously tells them of the situation, they're like, "We'll get the money for you, soon as." And obviously, she's like, "I don't want any stolen money." And obviously that's when Jake gets quite sort of sassy and
because he starts sort of swearing, and then she tells him off, and they have a bit of a scuffle, sort of falling down.
Elwood tries to de-escalate, and then he accidentally sort of says, "Christ,
for Christ's sake, Jake, calm down, Elwood." And then this is funny. It's a really good gag where they just keep going back and forth, and then so they get their little holy mission. from.
Well, they get their holy mission really. Well, I suppose they get their holy mission from her, then they get their holy divine solution from James Brown.
Yeah. So there is, again, with when they visit with the Penguin, there is this sort of, I like how John Landis does add these little touches of doors shutting on their own, and
that was that's fantastic.
And the nun, it looks like the nun sort of floats backwards, but it's almost
she does.
Yeah, well, they do, but it's like you could believe that she didn't, but it really obviously it looks like she did. Again, it's that fine line between, it's a little bit surreal, but it's not like completely out there. Again.
It's not magic.
Yeah, it's just like a hint of, that was weird. But there's a lot of cameos in this film. We have, first of all, Cab Calloway as their, parental figure, who looked after them when they were young. Curtis, that's his name in the film. And he's like, you got to learn to behave, get your ass down to church. He's someone they look up to from him. He's taught them the whole music side of things, got them into blues. And then he's like, so they trust him, and he's like, yeah, go get down to church, and you'll get your revelations there. And then, yes, as you said, James Brown is the next person that meets them, basically. And they're just sat at the back of the church, and James Brown, next cameo, starts breaking into song. It's basically it's the first musical number of the film, I believe, the church one. Don't know what the song's called.
It's I never thought about that. I guess there's a lot of music in the film, in interim, because obviously there's a lot playing on the radio in their car. That happens in the chase sequences later, and obviously there's the Blues Brothers theme.
Yeah, the opens with their theme music at the prison.
I actually never thought about that is the first music number in the film.
So as their quest begins, basically, the first musical number is seeing, basically, James Brown is saying he's heard, when I woke up this morning, I heard a disturbing sound, and they basically, he's heard the message of what the Blues Brothers need to do, and he's trying to also assist them along their way as they go through the film.
But again, that's obviously because of the loud American preacher thing. That's another detail where it's similar to what you're saying about the possibly how they represent magic. It's just you could interpret it that way because it's not a direct sort of. It's not direct. It's more a bit more abstract. You can take a few more sort of, because it could just be him being. It could just be a coincidence. But obviously, you've obviously gone and found that deeper meaning.
Yeah, but for the most of that scene, James Brown is just preaching to everyone. But then there's a bit in particular where he looks at Jake, or it looks like he's looking at Jake.
At least how it's edited.
Can you see the light? Yeah, and then Jake is illuminated in the film. They're showing that magic, but again, Elwood notes that he can't see it, so it is just this figment of Jake gets illuminated with the light, and he's like, the band, we could put the band back together, and then they all start joining in with the dancing. The church erupts in dance, and it's where the film really starts picking up. And as you said, it starts off slow, and then you get the first big number, and then it slows down again in between. But
I do think the pace is a bit, as you say, it's a bit on and off. It does sort of speed up, slow down. But I do think
it breaks in between.
The film is concise, though. We said this when it's running time. It's 9 minutes longer than its sequel. It's I think 2 hours 14 minutes is what it was on the runtime. It does not feel like 2 hours 14 minutes. It feels like a feature length 90-minute film because of how well paced it is.
And then the whole middle of the film is them trying to regroup the old band, and they have to go here, there, and everywhere to pick up the remnants of their band. Obviously, here and there, they run into the police. Immediately after the church, I believe, is when they're driving around and they run a red light.
Yeah, and the infamous red light.
The light was yellow, sir. Anyway, so they go the police check Elwood's driver's license, and it's 10 million, suspended license, all this, and then we can't stop here.
It's basically the Navy SEALs copy pasta, but in an 80s computer format.
Yeah, but so they can't stop here. They've got their mission to complete. So the first chase sequence initiates, and it is one of my favourite. There's only like 2 main chase sequences, but they got the big one at the end, and then this one where they go through the shopping mall, and it's ridiculous. But again, the way they've done it, because they really did. You wouldn't be able to do it now, as we've said. It's like CGI and stuff would probably take the place of most of it.
What it is just it's not making any physical mess, so they don't have to clean anything up. They don't have to build sets. It's all in a computer.
It was an abandoned shopping mall that they did up to basically trash themselves, and obviously they got quite lucky to find that. But the sequence itself is just a load of fun, because they have obviously backing music behind all the chase sequences. That again, it's that rhythm and blues. It fits in, but it's upbeat. So it's like this whole circus act of these police cars getting stuck, trying to navigate the mall, and the bluesmobile just smashing through everything basically. But it's a load of fun. Got the music, every tune in between, even in between the main numbers, as we've said. There's like good music throughout the entire film. And
I said I'd put it on my playlist of movies, like my collection of movies of films with music in it that makes me want to invade Vietnam, because it's got a banging 70s sort of 70s late 70s soundtrack, because it came out 80, didn't it? So it's not really an 80s movie. It's more of a 70s movie, really.
Yeah. But and then they obviously outrun their police counterparts, but they gain their first main enemy, which is the police. And 2 like cops in particular that are like, I'm gonna get that sucker, look what they did to our car. They broke my watch. I love those lines, because they just trash everyone basically. No one particularly dies, but they do they're irritating beyond all recognition really, the Blues Brothers. But we love them. Oh, they go back to their place, Elwood's place, don't they? And then you meet the second antagonist, which is Carrie Fisher, who is Jake's ex, now that he's out from prison. She's hunting him down, trying to kill him, because... Yeah,
like Wile E. Coyote style as well.
Yeah. She, like, the first interaction they have is her firing a rocket launcher at them, and they just duck down, and, like, they trashes the wall behind them and the doors.
Yeah.
But no one cares. Like, no one bats an eyelid. They just get up and carry on.
Well, there's a bum sleeping on the staircase just above it as well.
Right. It's just that thing of, the Blues Brothers carry with them all this crazy action and weird stuff, and it's like, this is normal. But they get back to Elwood's place, and, has his dry white toast. Jake has a drink, falls asleep on his bed.
Yeah, in the tiny room.
It's a tiny room. And you have you said about the scenicness of, you have the urban environment, the trains going by, and the lovely shot of Elwood in the window.
It's very sort of... I mean, the whole, like, sunglasses, like, blues look that they've got with, like, the suits, it's very... Like, it feels like I should be watching Breathless or something when they're, like, dressed in their sunglasses. It feels like it's some sort of French New Wave in its appearance when they're in those urban environments. It's very... As you said, it's as I said at the time, it's very scenic when Elwood's sort of leaning out the window and seeing the trains coming by. It's very sort of, like creative auteur type cinema stuff that you have in this film, where it feels like a movie, which is weird to say in a modern day where it's like, I feel like sometimes we just get movies now that they just don't feel like movies, they feel like products. This was just like, it felt like a movie.
No, but there's a lot of lovely shots like that as well, spread throughout. Like it does a lot of good things. Again, they run in with the police again that they're trying to visit. But also Carrie Fisher's there again. The murderous...
John Candy's also there. John Candy. Is he like a parole officer or something?
Yeah, well, he definitely knows Jake. They make it clear that he kind of knows Jake or somewhat. Because he's like a business card thing. Yeah, this is the home of the one Jake Blues and one Elwood Blues. But anyway, and then Carrie Fisher's there to blow up the whole building. While they're in it, the cops... I love the scene where the cops fall on the bed, and everyone, while the Blues Brothers are asleep, the cops bust in the door, the building blows up, they all fall on each other, and then the Blues Brothers just get up out of the bricks and they're like, we gotta go to work.
It's
and
a
then
really
everyone
good
else.
set recreation, because they are literally doing that for like practically with a miniature that they're blowing up for the wide shot.
Yeah.
And then they are recreating the room on a soundstage, I guess, and they're literally collapsing the floor, and like stuntmen are falling through the floor.
Yeah. And then they just get up out the bricks like nothing happens.
Yeah.
But again,
I just love how it's like we don't know like what she's used to blow up the building. She just flicks a switch on her detonator, and the entire building just collapses.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a bit later where she's just got a book of all sorts of, like flamethrower, rocket launcher, bombs. She's kitted out to kill them, really.
Yeah. Doesn't she run like a beauty salon? And
yeah,
that's
I don't know.
That's another funny contrast to the background.
Yeah,
while she's reading weapons of war magazines.
Yeah, she's in a what is it? Like nail and dye. There's like a play on the words.
Nail salon. Yeah.
There's a play on words with the title of it as well. But yeah, so then they get up and they carry on trying to regroup the band. There's a middle of the film where I can't quite remember the order of things, but yeah, they go through each group. There's like Murph and the Magic Tones that they pick up, who are running this gig that's not as good as what they were running really, and they go pick them up, and then
they go and they get the trumpet player. I can't remember his name, but he's the fancy waiter.
Yeah. So they're like, you'll never get them out of their high-paying gigs.
Yeah, and then there's Matt and
Matt and Blue Lou.
Yeah, who obviously they're in the diner.
Yeah, and then there's also the bit where they run into the Nazis somewhere around there. The order I get them mixed up.
I think that's when they're travelling to get Matt and Blue Lou. I think they go over that bridge, they knock the Nazis off the bridge. They're like, we're never going to move for anything. The Bluesmobile charges through them, and then they go, oh, and they fall off. So, and I think that's when they enter I think wherever it is, the city where the other two are, and they gather them up.
But yeah, so they introduce the third enemy, the white supremacist Illinois
the National Socialist. Sorry, it's the National Socialist White Person's Party.
Yeah, and they just basically a cop walks up to the window and they're like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Yeah, the fucking Nazi party," And he's like, "Illinois Nazis." The Blues Brothers, as you said, they irritate a lot of people, but mostly only people that seem to deserve it.
Or people who act a little like sort of antagonistic, or like the cops is a different story because their cops aren't really the villains in a conventional way. They're just doing their job, but they do kind of have it's more of an antagonist than a villain. It's like they just have differing sort of beliefs, and that means that they're in conflict.
Yeah.
Whereas like the other ones, they are just cartoon villains,
Yeah. But so then they go and get the one who's working at this high-paying restaurant. They go in and they basically just make themselves at home in his restaurant up until the point where he's like, fine, I'll come back to the band so that you don't keep pestering. You'll get him fired. They'll probably get him fired anyway. But I love the scene where they're just the contrast between the two Blues Brothers who are just throwing food at each other basically to catch it in their mouths, and Jake turning around to people behind him like, how much for the children? The women. I want to buy your women. It's just a joke, but
it's great.
And then he gives in, and then they go to Matt and Blue Lou at the diner, and you have another musical number with Aretha Franklin, who I remember seeing in the commentary and stuff, Blues Brothers was one of the roles that got her into stardom. So even some of the cameos, some of the cameos though that you see in this film, like Cab Calloway's been around for ages up at this point. James Brown was still quite well known, but Aretha
Franklin, up on Ray Charles as well. Yeah,
but Aretha Franklin was basically down on her luck at this point, and this was her sort of like recognition. And I love again another big song, Think. You Better Think. I think it's just called Think, something like that. But it's a great.
I will say there is one thing I do like about both of the Blues Brothers films, which is kind of it's like a weird contrast. Is that you say like she was down on her luck in real life. She's running like this dead end diner with her husband Matt, and then their friend Blue Lou, and then in the future, in the second film, This is
running,
after she's become an established person. She's famous and rich now.
Running this car company, isn't it? Mercedes or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. That's one of the few things that's really funny in the second film is that I think the expositional line of how they got that car dealership.
But the way they get recognised is two suited up guys. One wants dry white toast, nothing on it, and one wants 4 whole fried chickens and a Coke. And I love that that's their thing, because Elwood just has dry white toast the entire film, and Jake's all about his chicken and his drinks and whatever. So
sort of excess, sort of loud, loud sort of obnoxious one. Sort of the other one reserved, sort of almost like a weird alien, asexual one until he starts hitting on the woman.
I always remember that one scene in the restaurant earlier where he grabs a handful of bread and just shoves it at his face. And again, that's another thing which I'll mention in the sequel. He does that similar eating habit where he just grabs a handful of something and shoves it in his face, which I like. They keep Elwood being this weird sort of just eats a simple handful of it's ridiculous but funny. But yeah, so they pick up the rest of their band and leave Aretha Franklin's character just be like, well, shit. And they move on to sort of get their instruments, and they go meet Ray Charles. Yeah. Another cameo.
A brief but sort of memorable sequence. It doesn't take too much time up in the film, but it's a very good number.
A lot of these numbers, they walk in, they state what they're there for, and then it's break into song, just and then the song explains it all, really. Yeah. But the Ray Charles one is just a really upbeat, fun one where everyone outside the music place starts dancing as well.
The entire city,
yeah. And it's this whole feeling of everybody. There's a lot of fun, everybody together dancing. Either way, no, I'm just saying it's basically it's meant to be feel good, sort of everyone get up and dance sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, this piano, it works. That's basically his point of using the piano, was to say, this piano that you think doesn't work well, it's great. You should buy it. And then he's like, I'll take an IOU. You'll pay me later.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get their instruments, they get the band, and then they trying to find a gig. I think they first go to Bob's Country Bunker, and literally they're trying to ask Jake what they're doing, because Jake is you got Elwood as the driver, and Jake is the businessman, really trying to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, Elwood's he's not the brains of the operation, so that's why Jake sort of has to take that action when he comes back out of jail. But they don't go to Bob's first, because they go to somewhere, because Bob's is where they end up.
Yeah, they go do the phone. Yeah, so they go try and make a phone call to someone. Carrie Fisher blows them up. Yeah,
again.
And then they go shooting straight up in the sky with both of them in the phone box, and then they land back down.
It reminded me very much of Bill and Ted when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then obviously they didn't, book a gig or anything, so they just turn up at Bob's Country Bunker, basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is the place."
Pretend to be a country western band.
They obviously try and work their way in, and we're the band, and you are. And he's like, "Yep." Even though they're not.
Good old boys.
And yeah, they try and take the place. They start playing their own stuff. No one likes it. So then they basically improvise, and they play Rawhide from the TV show and Stand By Your Man, which are both two of my favourite numbers in the film again. But then I love pretty much every number in the film as well, so it's really difficult to pick.
Yeah.
But
having that situation where they can't play their own music, kind of does inject that good variety into the soundtrack.
Yeah, and it forces them to play a little bit different, but still fun, upbeat. Everyone loves it, and you got Jake throwing the whip around, sort of swiping bottles out in the air almost. Then ends up that gig doesn't really work out for them, does it? And they somehow drank more beer than they got paid for being there.
Well, in a way, that's another instance where you say they piss off people that could be considered kind of antagonistic. Because Bob, who's the guy who runs the bar, or the Country Bunker, he kind of neglects to tell them that the drinks past the first round were free, and so he's like, kind of like, no, gents, you got to pay me for your service here tonight.
Yeah, and he comes across a bit weird anyway, because it's like, we only have one kind of music here, you play what we want you to play. Yeah, but we pick up another enemy when the good old boys eventually turn up once everyone's gone home, which, they're a bit late. But
no explanation for that whatsoever, whether it's divine intervention or something. They just turn up late, as you say. Yeah.
But they turn up, and then Jake's like, let me go talk to Barb. And Elwood and Jake leg it in the car.
Yeah, they bail, and almost like it seems like it's going to be another sort of massive chase scene.
Yeah.
And
but then
two antagonists of the films, they both bump into each other.
Yeah.
The cops crash into the good old boys, however, and then they blame it on the good old boys.
I mean, to be fair, they're all going way faster than they should be. But the cops did just come out from a blind corner as well. Yeah. But not, it's both their faults. But yeah.
Well, again, it's like when you ram someone else, that you pretty much have the highway code. I guess it's different for police because they have double standards and stuff. But But yeah, no, it's just like, usually when you rear someone, you're the one that's at fault.
Yeah, and it's bad for the good old boys and Bob anyway, because they had a gun in their hands, speeding down the road and hit a police car. Is not good for them. Even if the police car hit them, that's not good on the books, is it?
No.
So but then they've got more enemies to deal with, but they get away from them temporarily.
And then they go talk to Maury after that, and they pretty much just get the final gig instantly, which is quite an achievement, really.
Well, they basically blackmail him, but.
Well, that's what I mean. It's not like a narrative. It's like a narrative achievement rather than an universe achievement. It's like the film manages to only have 2 gigs in it, and it still feels like this grand sort of like trailing band mission. Whereas like again, sequel has a lot more of those, but they are just completely flat.
Yeah, but like because Bob's Country Bunker's like midway through the film. Whereas, you've already had, like, the church
I think it's
scene.
just after the midway, because I think the Ray Charles number is the midway.
Oh, yeah, so you've already had the church, the restaurants, the Ray Charles towards the middle, and then you get to Bob's Country Bunker, which is the first actual Blues Brothers gig. And then they book in for their final gig. They go around trying to publicise it and all that when they steal a giant like megaphone off of a tower.
And they go around like 2 neighbourhoods, and we see like them going across like the beach. They're going through. Yeah,
they drive across the beach, through the fields, basically anywhere they can.
And when they like recap it, it's like they've literally been to like 2 areas. And that's it.
But
and they're like, that's good enough. We should get to the gig now.
And then they're out of gas, obviously, and they have to. They make anything to get them running late, basically. But does mean I think that also plays into the fact how they sneak in and dodge the cops in the end as well. But so they are busy getting gas while the band has gone to the big venue preparing, and they find out that they're not really getting paid for it.
Which has a 0 impact on the plot or conflict.
And they just play anyway. Whatever. We're here now. We can't go home.
They find out because Curtis is there, and him and the orphans have been promoting the thing as well.
Yeah.
So Cab Calloway obviously then takes the lead while Jake and Elwood, infiltrate.
Well, Elwood flirts with a girl for a bit, and Jake's like drinking and stealing some cigarettes, and they're doing whatever at the gas station while they wait for gas. So Cab Calloway takes like the first lead song because the Blues Brothers are late, and they do Minnie the Moocher, and they magically transform into the new outfits. But it's also the thing of like they didn't. That's just for us to see, like the white suits and stuff, just to make it look fancy.
It's like a minor hint of like fairy tale logic where it's just like it's not registered by the others, so it's like it can be completely interpreted as like filmic sort of like wonder rather than, as you say, rather than it being some sort of noticeable thing for the characters. It's like when you were talking about the light shining on Jake and Elwood being like, I don't see a light. It's like those elements of magic and divine intervention being thrown into the story in that way, where it's like it's abstract, it's not certain. It adds that sort of. It doesn't make it surreal. It doesn't make it into like a Naked Gun because, but it's like it rides the line of that weird tone, and it is kind of lightning in a bottle in that respect.
Inevitably, the Blues Brothers do show up. They sneak in, park the car, see in a hidden place. They sneak in, past the cops while Minnie the Mooch is playing, and then they get in and they do their two big numbers with all the cops, the good old boys, Bob, and the massive audience there waiting for them, basically. But they're like, even John Candy's like, I want to hear these guys play before we arrest them. So
that's like a nice little moment of likable nature to one of the antagonists, and that is a point where the police aren't the bad guys. They're just they're like the stormtroopers.
They're also the only bad guys that succeed as well. Everyone else gets their comeuppance, basically.
Yeah, even the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, but so the Blues Brothers do their big numbers. They do Everybody Needs Somebody to Love. Which is a big one. I know one of your favourites, right?
Yeah, no, I mentioned at the beginning, obviously, that's one where I remember a lot of the sort of shot compositions.
Yeah, and even also,
we talked about during the film how, or afterwards, obviously that's my favourite number in the thing. I know it's a very basic bitch of me. I know that you said that you don't necessarily agree, but you do think it's a good one.
It's one of my favourites, but as I said, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I was going to say, like, I remember vividly the whole, like, the police are in... They like have these red strips backing them as they're spaced out across the back of the like audience, which is like really, again, it's like that musical feel where they set it up so that the police are specifically lit up by these red lights at the back of the whole audience, and there's a lot of film.
The stage is bathed in blue.
But so they do Everyone Needs Somebody to Love, and then they will go into like Sweet Home Chicago, and everyone's it's picking up, everyone's loving it, and then they basically sort of go off stage, and there's this guy who's like, I'll pay you to record your songs. Here's $5,000 in advance or whatever it is.
Perfect amount, yeah.
And then they're like, is there a secret way we could get out of here? And he's like, I just happen to know a way. So they make a break for it and tell the band to keep playing, keep everyone distracted, even though they basically sneak out on the stage, but everyone doesn't notice for like a minute, and then they're like, where'd they go?
Well, it's weird because that stage trapdoor leads to the sewers. It's bizarre.
But they make a break for it. The audience still loving the song, but the police and the good old boys realise. They run into Carrie Fisher for the last time down in the sewers. She basically shoots at them, and then Jake has to sort of reason with her and be like, it wasn't my fault, because I left you stood up.
He's being like, to begin with, he's being a submissive piece of shit.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm trying to, I was doing my best, don't do it. And then basically...
he takes those glasses off and mind control happens.
Yeah, mind control. He basically tries to seduce her, and he's like, you love me. And then they have a kiss, and then he just drops her in the mud, and they run.
It's great, yeah. She's still holding the gun, and they just run.
And then she chases them to the car. They make a break for it. The megaphone comes off the top. They have their one of the best lines where like, a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes, it's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
That's
Hit
it.
Yeah. And then they just drive off, smash the megaphone off the top of the car, lose that excess weight. They're going to need it. She runs out shooting at them, and then the cops realise from up top, and everyone starts shooting at them, but they're, stormtrooper bullets, And then they start the biggest chase sequence of the film, which is basically the entire ending of the film, where, again, everyone's after them, the good old boys, the police... the good old boys.
They
get taken out real quick.
We skipped over that because it's very trivial. They glue the brakes so that they can't stop and they crash.
Elwood has his little glue that he uses a couple times to slow everyone down, and he glues their accelerator pedal, and they basically lose control and drive into the water, and then you just end up with all the cops after them from dusk until dawn, basically.
It's like a full half an hour chase sequence, even like obviously once they're on foot, but it is it's just cinematic
amazing
chaos
as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
it cuts from like nighttime after the show to like dawn. They're still being on the run from the cops, and he's like, I gotta pull over. He like drifts across like a median between two roads, and all the police cars follow him and obviously end up in a massive crash, like 20 police cars upside down all over each other. And then the two cops that we're like following as like main antagonists, and John Candy as well. Their car goes round, managed to dodge the first crash, but it's going so fast they end up in the back of a truck. And again, like their hat is half off, and you know, it's like ridiculous, but it's just hilarious how they end up in that truck upside down with like one of them's fallen on their head. But silly. And he's like, give me the mic. This is a car 55. We're in a truck.
Yeah, he's at this point. John Candy's just like, I am with idiots. You know, I myself am not the smartest cop in the world, but these guys are stupid. Because, I mean, obviously that's the first of like two major pile-ups in that chase scene. Yeah. Because obviously they pile up on that particular road where I mean, you said it while we were watching it. Like in some shots, the Bluesmobile is just going too fast.
Yeah, because they show the speedometer of the Blues Brothers as they get into Chicago. I'm pretty sure Chicago. They get.
Well, they launch off of that road, and that's already like an amazing stunt.
Yeah, but like the speed that the camera follows them as they go past, and they said in like commentaries and stuff that they had to add background people because obviously they hired the street out for the day or whatever. Yeah. But because the Bluesmobile looks like it's going so fast, they've edited it. But it is actually just because they managed to get the car like up to like 120, 130 miles per hour down like Main Avenue of Chicago. So it looks
nearly
ridiculous.
Crashing into other cars and stuff.
Yeah,
it's just like,
some of the stunts and stuff. And then they go out through tunnels, crashing some police cars. They do like this jump out of the tunnel over the top of one police car, take their lights off the top, and then all the other police cars just smash into it. And there's
they
like
all get out
big,
and start shooting at them.
Yeah, massive pile up of like 30 police cars. Yeah. And they all start shooting.
The Nazis.
Yeah, then the Nazis show up because they hear over the radio. And I love how, again, when the police are on the radio, they show like police boats, police horses. Like, again, it escalates so quickly as we get to the end. But the Nazis show up while they've lost the cops temporarily.
I mean, the important part of this chase scene, though, is eventually they reach that unfinished bridge, which basically just becomes like a supernatural ramp. And the Blues Brothers are chased up it. Mm-hmm. They reverse out of it. And then, I guess we, like with the fairy tale magic logic of the film, we cut back, and they've just flown over the Nazis' car in some magical jumping ability.
Because, like, they're somehow... Again, not like all the other stunts have been pretty over the top, but somehow the back end of their car hits the ground and they flip way up into the air over the top of the other cars, and you get them zooming over the top of them as the Nazis are distracted, and they just drive straight off the edge. And somehow they're like a million miles in the air. And you get like Flight of the Valkyries playing as they're in this whole chase sequence.
Well, I was going to say that's the interesting part about that stunt is that's not even the craziest thing that one of the cars does in that particular part of the chase sequence. Like the Bluesmobile turning, like flipping around and flying over the Nazis. The Nazis literally fly off of the bridge and are flying forward for ages.
They literally, because I think they pretty much dropped a car.
Yeah,
from like the skyline of Chicago down on like an empty lot, and it's so high, and you can tell that it's real footage as well because of how it's a little bit fuzzy, but it is impressive. And they just drop the car, and then they cut to it landing in the road in front of the Blues Brothers. They magically jump it, and the Nazi car behind them falls in the hole with it, and both the Nazis dealt with. And the Blues Brothers just keep going.
Put in their own grave,
Yeah, but they're just, nothing can touch them. They keep going, reach like their final destination. They basically drive through one building again, and they park up. And as soon as they get out the car, the Bluesmobile falls to pieces because it's taken, it's been shot at. The engine's blown. Everything's,
Well, it's a very cartoony falling apart, but it is just like it's the job of that car was to get them there, and now it's done.
And Elwood takes his hat off to rip the car, and then they're like, "Come on, we got to go." And then the lovely sequence where they show up at the bank where they're trying to pay the money, finish their mission. They block the door up with like benches and bins and stuff, and you get the military, the fire brigade, the police. Everyone shows up. It's like 1,000 people, tanks. It's completely over the top of everyone just showing up for just the Blues Brothers. It's like excessive force has been approved, and they're trying to break in the door that they block up. And the Blues Brothers just walk up to the desk and they're like, where is the office of Cook County? And it's like, just down there. And thank you. And then they just speed up and run off. But again, there's a contrast between them just being calm and then running off. And then the cops do the same when they break in. And they just, they're all yelling, and then they pause and they're like, do you see two guys in a two-hat black suit? It's like, I just sent them down there. And then they finally get to the bank, and it's like, I'll be back in 5 minutes is a note on the door, and they have to wait 5 minutes for...
too busy shooting E.T. Whatever movie
Steven Spielberg just happens to be there. And
Steven Spielberg. Like
another cameo. I mean, I forgot to mention you had Frank Oz earlier as well. And there's a bunch of really famous people that just happened to be in this film because they were there. Like they literally, Steven Spielberg was there, so they were like, "Do you want to just play the banker guy?" So they show up, and he like gives them. They pay the money, they get it through, they get the receipt, and then they get handcuffs on them, and like 100 guys with guns pointing at them, and the music kicks in, and cuts to them in jail, and they're doing Jailhouse Rock because they're like finale. And everyone at the prison is just dancing, and then they have this lovely bit at the end where they cut between all the like characters and cameos and stuff, and they've got like James Brown and Cab Calloway and everyone just doing their bit to the song, but like separate takes, and the crew at the end as well, the whole film crew, and it's just this whole like fun sort of it's a brilliant film. The music's great. The action is great, characters are great, and there's so many people in it, it's ridiculous. So, Blues Brothers, brilliant film. However, 18 years later, they decided to make a sequel. Dan Aykroyd is back. They put it as in memory of John Belushi, Cab Calloway, and John Candy as well. Because all three of them passed away. And obviously they have to... It starts off with Dan Aykroyd, Elwood Blues, on his own being released from prison.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd, though, he's basically... I mean, this time round... I mean, didn't John Landis directed this one as well?
I think so, but it's...
he did, I remember, because I remember taking note of this, because there was so many credits at the beginning, but eventually it said, directed by John Landis. Oh, God. It's...
I remember not enjoying... I've seen it like once or twice before, and I remember not liking it at all. Whereas when we rewatched it, the beginning wasn't too bad, as you said, but it really goes downhill, and it's just nothing in comparison to the original.
I'd never seen this film before, right? It was another important part. But so we put on Blues Brothers 2000. We looked... when we were putting it on just before, I think we took like a break because we watched them on the same night. Yeah. We took a break between that and Blues Brothers. We just come off the heels of watching Blues Brothers in very high spirits. Immediately, Blues Brothers 2000 came out in 1998, not 2000. So already we're off to a bad start, to say the least.
Yeah, it's odd.
And obviously they introduce like characters like Kid and stuff like that. The problem is that they don't do anything with the characters in this. It's like, okay, in the first film they didn't really do too much with Elwood and Jake in terms of like how they progressed as people, but that's fine because the film wasn't really about that. It had like a goal and a purpose.
Yeah, it was about their mission.
Blues Brothers 2000 has no goal or purpose. No. The mission of Elwood is just to put the band back together and perform for a voodoo witch. Magic is way too... Yeah, they've gone full Looney Tunes in this film, there's like magical effects on everything. It's insane how wrong they could get it.
But it's not like you get returning. The whole band returns other than Jake, and then you get the return of the Penguin. She's still hanging around, and you get Aretha Franklin's character, as we mentioned before, comes back, and those are like good, returning characters. They're still doing their thing. But then you get new characters because you have to replace Jake with someone. And Elwood.
And they replaced him with 3 people.
Yeah, like first you've got the kid from the orphanage that Elwood just basically kidnaps, but wants to join the band. Then he's at this strip club, which isn't really a Blues Brothers setting.
Yeah,
but
we need to talk about how this film deals with sex and being kid-friendly, because you obviously you talked about the inclusion and introduction of the kid character, Buster.
Yeah.
This film takes a very kiddie tone. It's very simple. It's like the Voodoo Witch sequences and like the end, the way that the characters interact. It's like it's been made for a child. The problem is, though, with that, the first location we go to is a strip club, and then later on there's a sex hotline that we have an entire number about, which is it's and all the numbers are related. It's just like there's such a focus on sex and like that doesn't have anything to do with blues.
Yeah, but and then at the nightclub, the strip club, you have John Goodman as well.
Yeah.
His character isn't really introduced very well, and he's just sort of tags along.
Turns up. Yeah.
But one thing I'll give him is the first I guess proper musical number where he gets up on stage with Elwood, and he does a good job. I enjoyed John Goodman's and Miles Dyson's performances on the stage, but all of the songs in this film are nowhere near as memorable as the first one. I can't remember any of them.
Even the John Goodman one, which is very Blues Brothers in tone, it is unfortunately it's a little bit forgettable, and I think that's not just the fault of that particular number, but just the fact that the entire stuff around it, like this film, it's aggravating how wrong it gets things.
Yeah, and then they have the whole Elwood has this mission where he's trying to convince Curtis's son to join the band, but Curtis's son doesn't know about his dad Curtis and is a police chief or something.
Yeah.
And he's basically the antagonist until he becomes a blues brother towards the end, and
Curtis's son is played by our friend Miles Dyson
character.
Who I do not
figure
know
out
the name of the actor.
Name eventually.
He's like our Cameron Mitchell. Like, he's just going to turn up in everything we watch eventually. And Buster and Elwood have like a little scene on the side of the road, because Elwood says, "Well, guys, if you want to go, then you can go." And it's like if in a film where this is a bit more developed, it makes sense because Elwood wasn't the inspiring one out of the two of him and Jake. But the problem is there's no deep development. It's just like, okay, in that same scene where he goes, we should stop, let's give up. Buster then talks to him, like you say, and he's immediately his character arc is resolved. And it perfectly reminded me of Rise of Skywalker. And I know I said that we weren't talking about Star Wars, and I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, and it's a complete accident that this has come up in my brain. But that film, like this film, it suffers from the issue of it's just we're moving on. We're introducing stuff, we're not developing it, and we just continue. It's like,
but yeah, so there's no resolutions in one scene. Music's is nowhere near as good as the first film. Some of it's okay, but nah. And then one of the most integral parts of the first Blues Brothers, police chases. There's one in the film, and there's one good crash, but then they go over the top with it because there's no other. They haven't spread out the police chases throughout the film or anything. There's just one police chase where 40, 50 police cars all pile up in the same spot like dumbasses.
Well, this is the other part about that is that the joke of the police officers, the police cars all piling up in the first movie, it's not the crescendo, it's the build-up of the joke. Yeah. Because in the first one, the climax of that joke is John Candy and the state troopers landing in a van. And it's like in the second one, but as you said, they have this. I said this to you while we were watching it. I said every time they're cutting to a new shot here, and I'm seeing more cars get put in this pile up, I'm just angry because it's like it was funny 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, but also I needed more of that from the original Blues Brothers. There's so many chases all over the place, and crashes here and there, whereas this just has one short. It's like a 5-minute chase sequence or less, and like 3 minutes of it is just police cars crashing in one spot, and then they all get out and they're just injured. That there's no
and
no,
all their hats
funny,
are like torn and stuff like that.
And the music over the top is not blues at all. It's like it's not
Western.
really fitting.
A lot of it's all really Western.
And even the ending, Curtis's son and John Goodman's character stay in this battle of the bands and everyone's playing music. Elwood and Buster make a break for it. And then they end on a cliffhanger where they're being chased by police again. Why a cliffhanger? Why? It doesn't make sense.
It wasn't even a good cliffhanger either. As well, a cliffhanger for a sequel where one of your castmates is dead is a terrible thing. It's like, I think back to the second Bill and Ted film. Obviously, they've made a third one now that they made like last year or this year. But that film had to get around the fact that the second Bill and Ted film, it has a conclusion. It has a conclusion where it's like, oh, this is where the wild stallions go, and Bill and Ted become famous and stuff like that. But in this film, it's just like, okay, you've not earned this. This is not.
No.
You could do a cliffhanger feasibly, but you've not earned any goodwill. I do think that it's important to understand that this film is not the worst thing ever, but it's more the egregious nature of that. It's coming off the heels of Blues Brothers. It's not. Again, it's not. This is no like Wish Upon, Suicide Squad sort of mess. It's not like even good bad. It's just like, okay, it's mediocre. It's made the wrong decisions for callbacks and sort of additions to the story.
Yeah.
It's taken the wrong lessons away.
Like, even other than the ending part once they get to the Voodoo Witch's place, that's the bit I remembered that I hated, which I still do. But up till that point, it's a bearable film. Like it's still, I can see it's trying to have fun. It's trying to, there
are a few times where we giggled along with the film. Like there's a few jokes that do hit. Again, it's the sequel problem will always be never people misinterpret what sequels should be, or at least Hollywood does. They think sequels should be bigger and grander and more sort of like louder, like in like visual noise, like we add more stuff. Yeah. And yet it takes away the heart and soul of what the original film was, which was a comedy about two sort of hucksters trying to bring like an old-timey kind of music to a general audience and try and make some money off that to save
and do a good thing for
orphans,
their orphanage where they grew up. And
it's turning their lives around, really.
In comparison to the cameos from the first film, I don't recognise anyone in the second film. Anyone that's a new cameo or whatever, because there are musicians in there, but who they are, I'm pretty sure their careers didn't pick up from the Blues Brothers 2000.
Yeah, you said this. Yeah, it's just any of these new cameos. There's no way that this is going to be a career jumpstart for them. That's a career graveyard. Is what that is.
The film itself doesn't stand out as much as the first one, and.
But yeah, no. As you say, it exists. I think I'd love to pretend it doesn't. Yeah. I definitely. I love the original. I think that it's definitely up there in one of my top something lists of my favorite films. I definitely think that it's probably one of the higher ones on yours. I don't know whether it's well. Just quickly, do you So would you recommend Blues Brothers?
Blues Brothers, the original film from 1980, is one of the most fun films you could watch. And if anyone, I'd like someone to prove that anyone doesn't enjoy it, because I mean it's just a load of fun. Yeah,
I too would recommend Blues Brothers 1980. Would you recommend Blues Brothers 2000, Joe?
No.
I think that's pretty much all we've got to say on it. Yeah, Blues Brothers, fantastic.
And I hope you all enjoyed us chatting about some musical police chasey film. Yeah, this has been another 2 More Takes from us.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. That's all she wrote, I guess.
Until next time.
Bye.